I have a really good friend named Brandon Pruitt, and me and Brandon have been, everywhere together on mission trips. And he talked me into my first mission trip when we went to Haiti several years ago. And since COVID and everything has been happening, there's really been no travel. A lot of the missional stuff kind of slowed down to a snail's pace, and it's not that we didn't want to go, there was really never any opportunity to go. So as things started moving forward, as they started getting better, we were approached. Brandon approached me, he says, "Hey, I had lunch with this really cool guy named Travis, so I really want you to meet him." I said, "Okay." So I think we had lunch together one day. He's just a really cool guy. He had some really great stories to tell about his mission work that he does with Flint Global. So Flint Global, he's the director of that. And I'll talk a little bit about what they do. They are a really interesting missionary program where they go to all these different places, and their main purpose is to make disciples. But while they're there, they're educating them on how to either start or grow a business that they already have. So the theory behind this is that these people can start a business, grow it, and in as little as 3 years, they can be self-sustaining, so that they don't have to rely on people contributing money to a monthly fund, yearly, annually, whatever. And it gives them a purpose. So what they're doing is that whole time that they're teaching them a business, they're also discipling them. So what that does is when their business starts to grow, other people in the community, because these communities, let's face it, they're very poor. There's just a lot of hustling going on, where each day they wake up and they're just going to try to find work to make it through that day. So what Flint is doing is they're helping them create a sustainable business, and then all of a sudden people from the outside start looking in and saying, "Hey, wow, you're all of a sudden doing really well." I said, "What are you doing?" And that's when the discipleship moment happens. So they bring the Lord into it, and they say, "Hey, this is how we did it." And then all of a sudden there's Bible studies starting to happen. And then what they do is they're planting home churches as well in little communities. So they don't have a church on every corner like we have. And part of me thinks that's good, because now they're not all leaving their home to go to a certain place and congregate, with each other, and then leaving this group out. So they're inviting everybody from the community into the home, and they're doing Bible studies, and they're sharing meals together, they're worshiping the Lord in song, and they're just getting into the Word. So they're really cultivating those relationships by starting this little business. So it just grows into wildfire. It catches fire like wildfire and just expands all over these villages. And we were able to be blessed enough to be a part of that here in Cookeville. And then Travis came to us one day. He says, "Hey, I'd really like for you to see what we're doing. Would you like to go to one of these places?" And I said, "Yeah, what are our choices?" And he named a few, and he said Rwanda. And I said, "Man, I saw that movie, Hotel Rwanda, and it really touched my heart." And he said, "Yeah." And we got to talking about that and what happened in 1994 with the mass genocide that happened in Rwanda. And I said, "Yeah, I think I'd like to go there and see that part," because they go all over the place, India, South America, everywhere. So we started planning the trip, and before you know it, there was 8 of us that that decided to go. And we took off from Nashville on the 19th of August, and we stayed there 10 days, 10, 11 days, and took about 30 hours to get there. So sitting still in a plane in an airport for 30 hours, that was a interesting experience, to say the least. As soon as we got there, it was just, you meet these people and they're just like us, and they're just really great people. They're just super sweet, they're very nice, and it is different because unlike a lot of places I've been where it's been a little more hostile, and but this was very welcoming, and it felt safe, and everybody was just very kind, because actually when I got off the plane, they let you out on the tarmac and you walk on the tarmac to the airport, and I had forgot one of my bags. So you can't, because of security, you can't go back across the tarmac to get it. And this guy just stopped what he was doing. He ran back to the plane, asked me where my seat was, got my bag, brought it back. It was just, and that was my first engagement with somebody from Rwanda, and it was just very special. And I knew right then that this trip was going to be blessed, and it just really took off from there. So after a really good night's sleep at a local hotel in Kigali, Rwanda, we got up the next morning and we just hit the ground running. And one of the first things that we did, which was really cool, and it was on Travis's recommendation that we do this, because what we did is very important to the Rwandan people, and that was go and visit the Genocide Museum. So very tired the next day, of course, jet lag setting in, and we went to, first thing we did was Sunday morning, we went to church, and then we went to the Genocide Museum. And first, let me talk about the church. Sorry, I got a little ahead of myself. We got up that morning, Sunday morning, and you know, here in Cookeville, we get up, we get the kids ready, get dressed up a little bit, head off to church, do church, come home. Well, this was different. We got up, super tired, all loaded up in a van, and drove out to the country. And country isn't like the country here. Roads are, you know, very bad. I mean, it's rough. And you go out into these villages and it's just nothing. And as some of the pictures that I've shared with you, it's real Africa. I mean, it's red dirt, children everywhere, just walking down the road, women, men, going to work, bicycles, carrying things. Just, it's real Africa. So that was our first real, and we pull up through this place and, man, where are we going? And we landed at this little house church, and it was just beautiful, and it really felt like walking into the soul of something. And when we were there, you just really felt the Spirit moving, and they were singing and singing their African praise and worship songs, and didn't understand a word of it, but I felt every bit of it. And it was really neat to hear them read the Bible in their own language. And we had a translator, so whenever they wanted us to say something, the translation was there, and they were very welcoming of everything. And they were just really happy to see us come to their village, because when you're white, you're recognized, you know, because we're not their kind. They're not used to seeing a group of 8 or 9 white guys. And there was one gal with us, jump out of a van and be at their house. And that had never happened to them before. And what they did during the worship was amazing, but what they did even after it was even better. They prepared all of their food that they had and brought it out to us. And that was really cool. They just, it was all they had. And you know that because of where we were. I mean, this was not a nice place. I mean, it was kind of like a hut, and there was a lot of people living in there. And I know by the end of the week, I kind of figured out what, people's budgets were, and it's not a lot. If they make $1 in a day, that's a lot to them. And so they prepared all of their food for us and brought it out and served us and wanted us to eat first. And it was really good food. I was a little tentative at first because day one, I've been down that road having the stomach issues on day one of a mission trip, but we ate it and we're very grateful. And then after we left there is when we went to the Genocide Museum, and that was absolutely incredible, heart-wrenching, just being there, seeing all the pictures, the video, even talked to some people there who had been in the genocide, and just hearing their stories about their whole family being murdered in front of them, put everything in perspective. And the main reason to go to the Genocide Museum day one is so that we could have it in our hearts and in our minds of what these people went through. Because every single person that you engaged with there was affected by that. In as little as less than 3 months, 1 million people were murdered. Savagely murdered. I mean, raped, tortured, not just shot, chopped with a machete. I mean, just the worst. And, we become desensitized a lot from TV. You see it a lot on TV, and you just see it so much, you're like, But this was real. And when your mind went there, it got real. And you saw these photos, you talked to these people, and it set the pace for us during the week, because that's something that, and I hope a lot of people don't ever, I hope nobody experiences that. But on the other hand, it's something that, part of history that we need to know. And it was important for us to do that, because now every relationship that we made during the week that we were there, I knew it was that much more special. And we even met some individuals who were part of this mission, this very layered mission, because a lot of the people there, even if it's a different mission than Flint Global, they work together. And that's the way it's supposed to be. And you see all these different levels, and you start meeting people, and they're just glad to work together to help the people of Rwanda. And we met a guy who was taken in, who watched his whole family get murdered. I think he was 5 or 6 years old, and his mother had laid on top of him to protect him. And from all the blood from her covered him, they thought he was dead. And then after he crawled out from underneath her, I think 2 days later, he just wandered the streets with no family at 6 years old. Nowhere to go. And he was taken in, and today he's a grown man, and he's doing really well. He was able to go to college there and get a degree, and because of that, he's able to help other people in the villages, showing them some engineering, some agricultural engineering things that he learned in certain villages, where their crops, when they grew them, maybe they were this big, but now they're this big, just because of certain things that you do, like mulch. Part of the theory before that was introduced was you burn the field and then you grow, and that's the worst thing you can do to soil, is burn it. So they came in, and when their crops were this big and the neighbors was this big, he's like, hey, what's going on here? And they come over, hey, how are you doing this? So that, again, that gives them an opportunity to start discipling this neighbor. And then he's like, oh, well, tell me more about this Jesus. So as you can see, that discipleship from their work is really what was magnetic and what was really something that caught fire, because let's face it, we all want the things of this world, you know? We want a nicer vehicle, we want a nicer pair of shoes, you know, we want our kids to have nice things. We want them to have, if they're on the baseball team, we want them to have the nicest, you know, they want those same things too. They want all of that too. We're no different in that, in our DNA. We just want better. And one way to have those things is to work really hard and make that money and in order to achieve those things. So once you can erase the love of money from it and say, hey, money can actually be a good thing, then that also works as a great way to get people to say, hey, I want that. How'd you get it? Well, let me show you. And it also gives them a better way of life, you know, by teaching them a skill, and it keeps them from having to say, hey, can I, you know, where's our monthly money coming from? It's the worst thing you can do is give somebody $100, because you're not teaching them, you're just giving them the fish. You're not teaching them how to fish. So one of the main things that I learned while we were over there was, you know, hey, we have such an opportunity here, even at Willow Window, and we already really, I think we do a pretty good job at it, is using this as a hub for a place to disciple and to spread the word, but I know we can do better. And it was one of the things that the people of Rwanda taught me was they're constantly doing that in their life, even when they're not doing it. So it's become such a culture for them, this discipleship movement, that even when they're not doing it, they're doing it. Just because they have such a love in their heart, they have such a strong work ethic, and people see that. Because there's so many people there that don't have it, and when they see somebody who has it, they're like, oh, you must work for the government, or you must... No, I don't. I was introduced to this team over here, and they taught me how to farm. Well, why would they do that? Well, let me tell you about a guy named Jesus. And then it just continues to grow. And so anyway, throughout the week, we just got to meet so many great people and got to visit a lot of their businesses. So that was the main goal, was to travel through Rwanda, see a lot of these businesses, meet the people that were growing these businesses, seeing how they were discipling in these villages. And it was just really neat. We visited, one of the main businesses we saw was a coffee farm. They call them washing stations. So we got to see from the beginning process of picking the cherries from the tree, the coffee tree. Honestly, I don't even know what it's called, but picking that and watching the whole process go and turning it into a coffee bean. And it was just really cool to see these coffee fields, because we were driving up the sides of volcanoes. I mean, these mountainsides, because Rwanda is a very high elevation, very mountainous, very beautiful country. And seeing, you know, being up there, because the coffee farms are on the side of the mountain, which is neat because you get the cool air. It's just the perfect soil, the perfect temperature. I don't know how to explain it, but they grow the most perfect coffee there. It's just the perfect environment. So we got to watch that process and have a couple of the people take us and show us. And one of the coolest things, one of the coolest things I saw all week, was there was a coffee movement there called Women's Coffee. It was entirely ran by women and from the village. So as you know, in some of these countries, a lot of countries, women are not valued. And so this was really encouraging to see that these women were doing everything, and they called it women coffee. And a lot of these women were come in from difficult situations, coming from the streets, abusive places, things like that. So just really an awesome second chance on life, and now they have this career, and it was just really cool. And we were able to bring some of that coffee back, and it's the most delicious. I love coffee. It was the most delicious coffee I've ever had in my life, and just wonderful visiting them. And we also got to go to a women's house called Hope House, where a young woman was the director there, and she was bringing women off the streets who were prostitutes, again, more abusive situations, discipling them, giving them a chance to at life again, and showing them the love of Jesus. And it was just really cool to see that. Very, very heartwarming. It just a very touching experience to see how God was moving in that. So near the end of the trip, we were really blessed to be in a part of Rwanda where they had several volcanoes and beautiful. We got to meet this family who started a school in their living room, and through a lot of prayer and a lot of working with the government, they were able to get a property and build this huge school. It was just really neat to see this family because they were just like us. It was just a missionary family from Alabama, I think. Or no, from West Virginia and Texas, and I think Alabama as well. But anyway, it was just awesome to see how the school grew in a short 7 years. I mean, just amazing the amount of love that poured into this and what they're doing there. So the last day, it was just really great. We even got a little free time, so we hiked up into this volcano. We were at about 10,000 feet elevation, and went on this little tour and came across a pack of gorillas, silverback gorillas. So it was really, really cool to be in their presence. I mean, I was literally 2 feet from them, and just surreal moment to be in the presence of something that could rip my arms off and beat me with them. But they were really calm and just beautiful, awesome animals, and that was really just a nice end to our trip. And before we went back to Kigali the next morning, and took another 30-hour journey home. But it was a true blessing. Blessed to have been able to go, once in a lifetime experience, and I'm looking forward to going back again in a few years to see some of the farms that had just started year one, and to see what that looks like in year three. See that self-sustaining income that they're getting, and see what the village now looks like after they've kind of planted a seed there and started a home church. And that's about it. I can't express how much of a blessing it was to be a part of this.